I never liked attics. Growing up, the attic in my childhood home always felt like a place where things didn't belong. Toys I'd outgrown, holiday decorations that only mattered once a year, and boxes of old clothes that no one wanted, but no one threw away. My parents never talked about it much, and I never asked. It was just there, hovering above us. I didn't think about that attic again until I moved in my grandmother's old house after she passed. It was one of those sprawling Victorian homes with winding hallways and creaky floors. She'd lived there alone for years, but her belongings were everywhere, as though she'd just stepped out for a moment. I inherited the house, and with no family left, I moved in to start over. It felt strange at first, a house that large for one person, but I thought I'd grow used to it. The first time I saw the attic door, I stopped mid-step. It wasn't a proper door like the rest in the house. It was a small, rectangular panel in the ceiling at the end of the upstairs hallway, with a pull string dangling down. It looked old, older than the house somehow. It didn't creak or move or show any sign of being sinister. But something about it froze me in place. I ignored it for as long as I could. There were enough rooms to keep me busy, unpacking boxes, scrubbing dusty windows, rearranging the old furniture. At night, the house groaned and popped with age, sounds I told myself were normal. I avoided looking at that attic door even when I passed underneath it. It wasn't until the third week that I heard the noise. I was in the living room, sorting through a box of old books, when I heard what sounded like scraping. It was faint, like wood against wood, coming from upstairs. I stopped, holding my breath. The sound came again, dragging across the floorboards. Just the pipes, I whispered to myself. I went back to the books, forcing myself not to think about it. The scraping eventually stopped. But the next night, it started again. This time, I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The scraping was louder, clearer. It came in short bursts, a dragging sound followed by silence. I sat up, my heart hammering in my chest. I grabbed my phone, checking the time, 2:47 a.m. Rats, I muttered. I didn't believe it, but it was something to say out loud. Something to keep myself from thinking about the attic. When I turned off the light, I swore I heard something else, a faint thud, like footsteps above me. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I decided I had to check. I couldn't keep tiptoeing around that attic, letting my imagination make it worse. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the hallway, staring up at the little panel in the ceiling. The pull string swayed gently, though I felt no draft. I took a deep breath and pulled it. The panel dropped open with a dusty groan, and an old wooden ladder unfolded. It looked splintered and unstable, but it held my weight when I stepped on the first rung. The air that rushed out was stale and heavy, and it smelled like something forgotten. I climbed up, the flashlight shaking in my hand. The attic was bigger than I expected, stretching across the entire house. Beams of sunlight pierced through gaps in the roof, illuminating piles of old furniture, trunks and boxes, draped in yellowed sheets. The air was thick with dust, making it hard to breathe. I shined the flashlight across the floorboards and stopped. My stomach dropped. There were marks. The floor was scratched in long, deliberate lines, as though something had been dragged across it over and over. The scratches formed patterns, almost like circles, but broken and irregular. I followed them with the flashlight, my skin crawling. I stopped at a trunk in the corner. It was large, made of dark wood with rusted iron hinges. The scratches seemed to lead straight to it. I swallowed hard, the air growing cold around me. "It's just a trunk," I whispered. "Just old junk." But I couldn't move. My eyes were locked on it. The flashlight flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw it shift. Just a slight nudge, like it had breathed. I scrambled back down the ladder, pulling the attic panel shut behind me. My hand shook as I locked it. I stood there in the hallway, heart racing, listening to the silence. That night, the noises started again. Scraping, louder now, and thudding. I curled up in bed with the blanket pulled over my head, jumping at every sound. When the footsteps started, slow, deliberate steps above me, I thought I would lose my mind. It sounded like someone pacing, moving back and forth across the attic floor. I stayed like that until morning. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, but the next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I started hearing things during the day, soft knocks on the walls, the creak of the floorboards above me. I couldn't bring myself to look at the attic door. I avoided it completely, always keeping my back to it when I passed through the hallway. But on the fifth night, something changed. I woke up to the sound of the panel creaking open. I bolted upright in bed, heart pounding. My room was dark, but I could hear the soft thump of the ladder unfolding. I grabbed my phone, fumbling for the flashlight app. My breath caught in my throat as I listened. The footsteps were on the stairs. Slow and heavy, they descended the ladder one by one, thud, thud, thud. My skin prickled, every hair on my body standing on end. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. I could only listen as the steps reached the hallway. The floorboards creaked outside my door. I squeezed my eyes shut, clutching the blanket. I didn't dare breathe. The footsteps stopped just outside my room. For a moment, everything was silent. Then I heard the doorknob churn. It didn't open, it just rattled, softly at first, then harder, like someone was testing it. My chest tightened, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it would burst. Finally, the rattling stopped. The footsteps moved away, back toward the ladder. I stayed frozen for hours, waiting for the first rays of sunlight to creep through the window. When morning finally came, I stumbled out of bed, feeling like I'd aged 10 years. The attic door was closed. The ladder was gone, as though nothing had happened. But the scratches were on the hallway floor, deep grooves that led from my door back to the attic. I didn't stay in the house much longer. I packed a bag and left that day, telling myself I'd sell it, burn it, whatever it took. But I still dream about the footsteps, and sometimes, when I wake up, I swear I can hear them, faintly, above me,